Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Colton, and today we're gonna go photograph the Carnival and do some long exposures of the rides. This is something that I normally do with my Mamiya 645 Pro and some medium format Kodak film, but ever since I picked up the Pentax 645D, which uses a medium format Kodak digital sensor, I've been very interested to see how it would compare in that same environment. So we'll be taking the Pentax 645D down there this time around to take some pictures and do some long exposures, and effectively to swap out some medium format Kodak film for a medium format Kodak digital sensor. So I'm very interested to see how this process differs, what those end results look like. And actually on Monday, I drove up to the baseball stadium because I had seen that there was a carnival there on over the weekend. And when I got there and pulled in, the caravan of carnival equipment was rolling out and I had just missed them. But turns out there's another carnival, maybe the same one, that has now set up shop on the opposite side of town in South Austin. And so that's where we're gonna go to photograph today. So without further ado, we'll grab the Pentax 645D and go to the carnival. All right, so that is the carnival, and I always have such a good time being under all the colorful lights of the ride, so that's super enjoyable. I did shoot this on the Canon ZR60 for all the B-roll, and I did use an improved import method for that footage, so hopefully it's a lot more smooth and just kind of overall a little bit better quality than the last time I attempted that. But if you found that footage as far as a B-roll style interesting, let me know in the comments below. If you'd prefer I just go back to 4K B-roll, let me know that as well. But on to the main part in this portion of the video, which is my thoughts having used the Pentax camera in place of the Mamiya. Having reviewed some of those files and images, I have to say image quality was amazing. Everything was in focus, the colors were great, there was a lot of depth to the file for me to be able to work with and make some minor adjustments to everything, so I couldn't have been more pleased with the end result out of this camera. You know, compared to the Mamiya, there's really a similar aspect to the image quality. They're both great quality cameras that are going to produce a quality image. The main difference is going to be what type of look you want. The Pentax is obviously going to have a more digital look. It's going to be a lot more clean, very low noise. It will give you the flexibility to get creative with that file, but ultimately it is a digital kind of look to the camera and to the images that it produces. Whereas on the Mamiya side, a little bit less flexibility in how much you can edit that file, but you are getting more of a film look, you'll have the grain, and you will also have kind of a more accented medium format look to the image because the negative size is quite a bit larger than the sensor size of the Pentax camera. So both great quality cameras with great output. It's just a difference in the style or kind of the look that you're going to get from these two cameras. So one thing I do want to cover is a pro and a con for the Pentax in using it. We'll start with the con, which was the mirror lockup function. This was my first time testing it out, and I have to say I was a little bit annoyed with its behavior. So for context, on the Mamiya side, there's a switch, and when you lift that switch, the mirror physically goes up and it stays up until you bring it back down. Now, that means that once it's up, you can just do, one click of the shutter or one click of your trigger, and you get an exposure. And the delay between those exposures is pretty small. It's basically just the time it takes to advance to the next frame on the roll of film. And that's really beneficial because some of these rides have multiple movements that they do, multiple rotations, different color patterns. And so depending on where you photograph within the ride, you'll get very different looks. And so you might want to photograph back to back to get some different perspectives from that ride. In this example here, we have some different shots, all of the same ride, but we have different colors, we have different patterns the light is making. And so, it's easier to get these kind of shots if you can just shoot back to back and time it out appropriately. And the Mamiya, for the most part, allows you to do that, aside from that small delay. On the Pentax side, there is a similar dial which you turn just kind of the same way you do on the Mamiya. So that's nice that there's a similarity, but the behavior is different. The mirror doesn't actually lift up when you switch the dial. What it does is it just tells the camera that when you push the trigger, the mirror is going to flip up and start beeping to let you know now it's ready for the exposure. And then you have to click the dial, or not click the dial, but you press the shutter button again, and then it exposes the image. Now the downside is the mirror goes back down once that exposure is done, which means you have to then repeat that process each time you want to do an exposure, and that creates a longer delay between exposures. Also making that problem worse is that the camera doesn't always seem to register when you push the trigger. And so sometimes there's even a little bit further delay and you have to click the trigger 2 or 3 times to get the mirror to go back up. And so that just makes the delay worse. So on the Mamiya side, it basically becomes 1 click is 1 exposure. On the Pentax side, it's minimum 2 clicks for 1 exposure. And sometimes it might even be 3 or 4 clicks for 1 exposure. So, at the end of the day, reviewing the files, I didn't miss out on any shots because of this, but it was annoying. And it did make me have to kind of sit through a ride multiple times more than I would normally do for me to be able to hit all the points of the ride that I wanted to photograph. So just an annoyance, but again, you'll still get the shots that you need to get. I did go into the settings to see if there's a way to change that behavior, and unfortunately there doesn't appear to be, so it looks like it may be just hard-coded into the software, but I will kind of do some research and play around with the camera, see if there's any workaround for that annoyance. Now on the plus side, this camera is a digital camera. That's no surprise, that's not unique to the Pentax, but there does come a benefit with that, which is being able to review the files that you're taking while you're shooting and not having to wait and go all the way home, get the film developed, and then see if you got the shot that you're looking for. And because the Pentax process is a little bit longer, I didn't necessarily look at all the photos I was taking, but in one specific example, I was photographing the zipper ride, and I had a feeling that maybe I needed to extend my shutter time, but I was able to look at this file and see that I was correct in that I wasn't quite getting what I was envisioning. I was getting a little bit of gap between the light and not get the full rotation. So that kind of gave me the proof that I needed to know that I need to actually extend my shutter time a little bit, or my exposure time a little bit, and then I was able to get the shot that was much more in line with what I was looking for. So that was definitely a benefit, just being able to verify things are in focus, they're exposed well, you're getting the movements that you want to get. So that was something I enjoyed out of the Pentax camera. Now, with that all said, am I gonna replace the Mamiya with the Pentax for any future Carnival long exposures? And the answer to that is not necessarily. I really enjoy shooting my Mamiya camera, and especially with Carnival long exposures. That's one of the things I enjoy using that camera to photograph the most. So I will continue to use the Mamiya for all of those Carnival long exposures, but it is nice to know that if any opportunities come up in the future where it might make sense to use the Pentax, or where I need to use the Pentax, that I will have the ability to trust that the camera is going to get what I want it to get. It can definitely do the job. So I have no qualms with the Pentax for any kind of Carnival long exposures. But that does bring us to the end of this video. I would love to know in the comments below what images you really liked, maybe what thoughts or questions you have about my experience in using either of these cameras. And if you did like the video, do give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button. That'll keep you in the know for when the next video drops. But for now, I'm Colton. I'll see you in the next one.